There are about 328.2 million people currently living in the United States. Gallup recently took a poll, and it is estimated that 5.6% of the population identify as part of the LGBTQ community. Now, 5.6% may seem pretty small, but that is still 18 million people. In Simmons Duffin's article, he explains the rule that Trump passed allowing healthcare facilities and insurance companies from denying medical assistance and financial assistance to LGBTQ members by narrowing the definition of sex discrimination. The second article, Belignant, Schmidt, and Wax Thibodeau, explain Biden's executive order that provides protection and equality for LGBTQ members within school, healthcare, work, and so on by expanding the term sex to include a person's sexual orientation and gender identity. The first article, Transgender Health Protections Reversed by Trump Administration. The Trump administration defines sex discrimination as only applying when someone faces discrimination for being female or male and does not protect people from discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary definition of gender identity is a person's internal sense of being male, female, a combination of male and female, or neither male or female. The supporters of Trump's new rule argue that health professionals know they must base medical decisions off biology and science, not ideology. Trump's new rule will have a tremendous effect on the type of care that LGBTQ people may or may not receive. Not only are transgender people hesitant to seek healthcare treatment, some people believe that they're going to be kind of backed into a corner now when it comes to coronavirus treatment and coronavirus protection, specifically the African American transgender population. The second article, Biden calls for LGBTQ protections in Day 1 executive order angering conservatives. President Joe Biden's executive order makes it clear that gay and transgender people are protected against discrimination in schools, healthcare, the workplace, and other realms of American life. By signing the executive order, this forces federal agencies to broaden their regulations and policies by expanding the term sex to include a person's sexual orientation and gender identity. President Joe Biden has a quote that children should be able to learn without worrying about whether they will be denied access to the restroom, the locker room, or school sports. Adults should be able to earn a living and pursue a vocation because they will not be fired, demoted, or mistreated because of whom they go to home to, or because how they dress does not conform to sex-based stereotypes. People should be able to access healthcare and secure a roof over their head without being subjected to sex discrimination. The people who oppose Joe Biden's ruling argue that this puts women's rights into jeopardy, especially when it comes to women's sports. In retaliation to Biden's executive order, multiple Republican state lawmakers have already passed laws that limit transgenders' inclusion in school sports. While Biden's executive order takes a big step in the direction of fairness and equality for the LGBTQ community, there is still a long road ahead. In Identities and Inequalities, Newman talks about how our lives kind of revolve around sexual dichotomy and labels. He is quoted saying, "We have separate clothing sections for men and women, separate public bathrooms, separate hygienic products, separate sections bookstores, separate sport leagues, and so on." In Simmons Duffin's article, Donald Trump is putting sexual dichotomies in law by limiting protections in healthcare and health insurance companies for the LGBTQ community. In Belignant, Schmidt, and Wax Thibodeau's article, Joe Biden is dismissing the common sexual dichotomy of man and woman by expanding protections for LGBTQ people regarding their sexual orientation and gender identity. Identities and Inequalities not only covers the explanation of transgenderism, but also explains that people who are transgender are becoming more comfortable with coming out into the public. Therefore, the rates in people being transgender are increasing. What is becoming more common in our society was already common in other cultures, though. For example, in Navajo culture, the term natal is identified as a third sex for those whose sex-typed anatomical characteristics were ambiguous at birth. There are also multiple other cultures that recognize more than two genders as well. As for my personal opinion, after reading the Simmons-Duffins article about Donald Trump eliminating rights and protections for LGBTQ members by narrowing the term sex discrimination, it was incredibly infuriating and worrisome to read, knowing that basic rights, medical rights, were being stripped in the middle of a worldwide pandemic. This could have catastrophic results for the LGBTQ community. After reading the Balignant, Schmidt, and Wax Thibodeau's article, I found it pretty refreshing knowing that the LGBTQ community was finally being recognized, but also because Joe Biden has appointed LGBTQ members as part of government, so they get a say in the rules, laws, and regulations that are being passed. Sexual dichotomy might have been more popular back then, but time's changing and the rules and laws have to change with it as well. With 5.6% of the population, more than 18 million people being a part of the LGBTQ community, the concern for their rights and protections are even more important. Not only are the rules regarding LGBTQ rights and protections vastly different in the two articles, but the way leadership approaches these issues is also night and day opposites. In Simon Duffin's article regarding Donald Trump rules and actions on sex discrimination, it was a huge blow to the LGBTQ community. But Balignant, Schmidt, and Wax Thibodeau's article regarding Joe Biden's executive order providing better protection and equal treatment for LGBTQ people, that gave people hope. And the more hope people have, the harder people will fight.